this particular one. Yeah.
Yeah, we are all domestic and economic managers now, so we need to. So everybody.
Domestic and economic managers.
Yeah, if you are the types who look at national and international trends.
Okay.
Or those whose professions are economists and the rest, academicians, and they look at other types of management or people in government.
Okay.
The domestic business, of course. Yes. So it's time to be prudent across board.
Time for prudence.
Yeah.
Because of the as we speak this morning, the shops around Accra are closed. My colleague was just in Aboseokai. I was reporting that the shops are closed. We are hearing same with Tudu and other areas because of what we're seeing in terms of the CD depreciation, among other trends. You have been in the office of finance minister before. When these things happen, usually your seat must be a hot one if you are the one sitting in that office.
Well, it's typically hot, and especially when because we are import dependent. Most raw materials are imported. Most knockdown parts are are imported, and then most other. As for when it comes to things like equipment, inputs like vehicles and the rest, they are imported. But we have also for some time been importing a lot of consumer goods. Okay. Sometimes as a result of domestic policy, sometimes as but when you face inflation, you face depreciation of the city, definitely the fiscal takes a hit. And when there is inflation, people on fixed salaries, people on low incomes, who cannot increase their prices to match the inflation. You can imagine people by the roadside selling and all those. They also buy. At the time they buy, the inflation would have been adjusted, and but their type of consumer may be low income, so they find it difficult. So sometimes it's the size of the coffee broke man that reduces the size of kinky and other. But it's never a good moment for anybody occupying the seat. But the more important thing I like to to chip in is crisis. Whether domestic or external are inevitable.
Crisis, whether domestic or external,
are inevitable.
But have you seen anything like this before?
Well, I think the reports speak for themselves. So when you are told inflation is a 21-year high, when the depreciation of the city is the worst, it was the worst among African countries now globally. When that is taking us to a level which probably you can think only about pre-ERP SAP days, especially if it continues and it's not arrested as quickly as possible. So yes, all governments have faced these setbacks, droughts, for example, or excessive rain, opposite of it. Agricultural supplies in particular, because we are also dependent, get affected. Or when commodity prices fall, when demand for chocolates, the demand for other products fall, when the prices fall, like the fall in crude oil price. I remember very well in 2015, whilst even reading the budget with $99, and then it falls before the budget could even be Parliament could finish concluding, and approving the budget. The price was already at 35 and falling, further. So you can see the gap. So it's your whole budget which is affected, given the importance of ABFA for capital expenditure and the rest. So it's never a dull moment. It's so pretty, but never dull, when you're in this kind of situation. So yes, it is a very tough. But the point I was going to make is the inevitability of crisis, the fact that crisis will be inevitable, whether they are minor crises or whether they are major crises, is the reason why we must prepare for crisis. Okay. And you don't prepare for crisis. You don't prepare for crisis during the period of crisis.
You don't prepare for crisis
during the period of crisis. You prepare for crisis when the times are good.
Okay.
So when you get a bonus, say, let's start with the household. That's what I like to do. When you get a bonus, you may promise yourself, as for next term or next academic year, I'm not going to borrow.
Okay.
To pay my children's school fees. My child deserves that dress, which he's been asking. So you make provision for Christmas, make provision for other things. That furniture that we need.
Okay.
Let's put money aside, and so it's when the times are good I can prepare better.
Okay.
Children will fall sick, right? If you want to prepare during a crisis, it's already hit you. Yeah. So, and that is the wisdom of the policies which we implemented. Like, that's what I'm coming to. Like the stabilization fund, we built it up. When COVID came, part was withdrawn, $250 million. When we had the Kwame Nkrumah disaster, we could withdraw only $13 or so million equivalent at the time, because we were then just building it. With 3 oil fields, could we have prepared better for this?
Okay.
And even during crisis, when you get resources as much as $6 billion, US dollars, within 2 years, within 2020 and 2021, could we have used it? Knowing very well that we had a dire fiscal situation before COVID. I mean, that is for certain. No matter, we shouldn't delude ourselves. It was there. We can talk about that later. So you use that part of that money to resolve the issues quickly. You don't go on a spending binge and whatever. So when you talk about, sinking funds, stabilization fund, that's the wisdom of, those measures that were put in place.
To prepare for a crisis of this nature.
Yeah. And that is what economists call counter-cyclical policies.
Counter-cyclical policies.
Yes, because there's a cycle.
Okay.
For example, if you take the advanced countries, there's a cycle. Every 3 years or so, demand goes down. They face a depression, which is what is being, predicted now.
Okay.
During that time, right, cocoa prices will fall because chocolate prices are falling in the advanced countries, right? And it will hit us, right? So during those times, we lose reserves, CD depreciates, and the rest. Okay. Another example, when crude oil prices fall, trouble in one respect, because now we are oil producing country. So you lose revenue. Your budget takes a hit. But when it rises, also it keeps rising until you can pass it on fully, to consumers or partially, you can put something aside. That's the idea behind our strategic stock, so that we buy low and then we release. If it prolongs, then yes, there's a headache. But if it is short-lived, or there will be things like the global financial crisis, COVID, or now Ukraine war, you don't have control over it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you see, the first one is the counter-cyclical, which I was talking about. There's a cycle, so you must learn to move against the cycle.
Okay.
That's a counter, so that when the time is good, then you prepare for the crisis, and when the time is bad, then you withdraw. When the times are good, you put money aside and you accelerate payment of debt, right? That's what we're saying, household. Maybe your neighbor will be surprised that you've come to pay the money you borrowed for school fees, in a
difficult time.
Yes, but maybe because you got some resources, so you paid ahead, right? That's what I'm saying. When the times are good for you, you put something ahead. Yes, then when you go back, with a smile, there's confidence. That's what we call the equivalent of the market confidence. So your neighbor does not hesitate, compared to another neighbor who, will be chased. And if you are not fortunate and your lender is somebody, you would hear a lot of noise in the neighborhood if you default, right?
Listening to you, I hear such an approach that simplistic makes sense, that in the time of crisis, because I remember you actually were building up these funds at a time when you were not getting the monies we expected from crude. The price of other commodities were also not so good. And so it means that you are not getting the revenues we expected. You were under the IMF, yet we're building up these funds. Yet you say that doing it in crisis is difficult.
No, much of those funds, actually, the peak of building them was 2013, and the one in terms of law was from 2012, 2011, thereabouts, because the law says that you must build a stabilization fund. You must build, and then we brought in the sinking fund. You know, yes, sometimes times were bad, and I keep saying, what if we didn't do anything and we had won the 2017 elections? You would have had to cost $750 million US to pay off the Kufuor bond. His Excellency President Kufuor's first sovereign bond, because we were paying interest. We were not paying principal. And by 2014, we saw 3 years ahead. We're confident that you win. It will destabilize your economic policy. But we also knew 2017, there will be 10 failed Sankofa and the rest, right? 10 failed and Sankofa in particular coming in, which could provide, you know, but you don't stay because those are just beginning. But you need to send a signal to the market. So we had to set up the sinking fund. And, you know, we used about 350 million, you know, to pay down, to start paying down. We did a bond in 2015. We used part of the money instead of putting it. In fact, the entire bond for that year, the 1 billion, which we did at 10.2, entire was used to do refinancing, restructuring. So when we talk about debt restructuring, we've gone through it. And there wasn't any noise, nobody had. ESLA was a debt restructuring instrument.
You've done debt restructuring?
That's debt restructuring. I can explain that. But, you know, to finish with the thought, I can explain that later. So, but to finish with the thought.
Of preparation.
You were preparing, right? Because you had issued 3 bonds. You know, we had issued 3 at the time, and there was this 750 which was issued with no mechanism put in place to pay down. And that was a HIPIC situation facing us again. And we had just come out of HIPIC. And the borrowing of that money was enabled by the fact that we were out of HIPIC and the debt had gone down. So we started putting the money aside. It wasn't easy, particularly in 2015, 2016, when crude oil prices, you know, were falling. But the vision of the president, you know, at the time was that we need to take care of this if we want to win, so that the confidence. Remember, we did the peak as a result of the, you know, money we borrowed for. We did 10.2, but by the time we were leaving office, the rate had gone down to about 9, which is close to the 8.5 when we did it 2016. So that meant that, and the market saw, because we told them that we are in a position to pay based on Jubilee alone. And the demonstration of the sinking fund, 75%, 70 to 75% of all the bonds that were issued. And you need to keep that promise. Right. So much of it was built when the times were good. We continued. And you remember, His Excellency President Mahama said we couldn't do 200 e-schools. Yeah, frank with the people. Right. So
because of the difficulties at the time.
Because of the difficulties at the time, you know. And we said we could do 120, even that part of it, you know, when, you know, after winning the elections and, you know, and Tamshel, Sankofa and the others. And that was, remember, that was a free SHS, you know, debate at the time. Right. So that is the and you don't also on account of the crisis, they are not preparing, because the next crisis could be severer. And if we had been in office, we would definitely have been better prepared for COVID.
You would have been better prepared for COVID?
Absolutely. Because let me give you an example. With one oil field, we were able to leave close to 300 million to prepare for the next crisis, which you would say was COVID. And remember, when COVID came, the first funds we took was to go to Parliament and ask for that money in the stabilization fund. With 3 oil fields, it wasn't built up. What if we had built it? 250 times 3, let me be modest, 750. We wouldn't be going to the fund for 1 billion. Or at all. Because in spite of where we're going, you know, you can read the reviews for the 2016 ECF, by 2016, the deficit was 6.1. I mean, we shouldn't believe that the deficit was 8.3 or it was 10.3 or 9.3. No, because it was a measure that they added, something we're doing to, again, like we're doing other things to make sure that we control contracts that were awarded and the rest. So we compiled a list. Okay. So the deficit we left 7 billion, but what they did was to offset it right in that budget, and it's there in the 2017 budget by 5 billion. So what was carried forward was 2 billion, not 7 billion. So what was carried forward, and if you look at arithmetic and go down, they did it for 2016. So the 2016 deficit in the budget, despite what was being read, was, under the new series, was 6.1 or 6.3.
There was a deficit you left.
Yes.
But I wanted to find
out. Which has not been bettered.
I wanted to find out, has this government had better times? Because I know we've been looking through their budget statements and everything. Have they had better times, perhaps, than even yours?
Well, sinking fund, we said about 300. Stabilization fund, about 300. You remember the cap was never removed, so they kept taking from it. Infrastructure fund, which we built from the 2015 bond in anticipation of supporting the self-financing schemes like Terminal 3, MPS, the self-financing project. That's why we set up this infrastructure fund. So that is a fund, which is the sovereign wealth fund, that would do the borrowing for commercial projects.
Okay.
250. I'm talking about the things that we left. Right? So all these buffers. Then bang, from 2017, 3 oil fields. We could barely do 70,000 barrels per day. Remember the turret bearing issues and the rest, yes. But by the end of 2017, 10 field and some cover field had come on stream because they had been commissioned. Right? And it shot to almost about 170, 180, and then close to 200,000 barrels per day. So yes, the times were good. I mean, now we can reflect soberly on these things because of what the nation is going through.
Okay.
Right? Now, even if we talk about crisis, yes, COVID bigger than global financial crisis, which before COVID was the largest crisis facing the global economy, which President Mears Mahama went right into in 2009. It had its effects. Okay. Right? It was belittled, as though COVID was more. The fall in crude oil prices, which affected the BRIC economies and the rest, was belittled. But when you belittle one crisis, you don't prepare for the next. Okay. So we didn't prepare.
So they had good times but did not prepare.
Yes, but even then when the crisis came, right? Even then when the crisis came, let me repeat again. COVID loan, 1 billion. SDR, 2021, 1 billion. That's 2 billion. Bank of Ghana, 1.7 billion. That's 3.7 billion. The World Bank just revealed that in recent years they are giving Ghana more money than they have, about 900. That's about 4 point whatever billion. Our own stabilization fund, 250. You are crossing 500. You haven't brought in PPEs by China and from others. So even the crisis itself, the resources that came in for the crisis
were significant.
No government had ever got such resources for crisis. Because when we are in crisis, we go to the IMF. And another record will be set. Should we really go through, the fund program, and should we really get a 3 billion? That would be the highest ever, 3 times what President Mahama, got. That is about 915 million, and that was the highest to date to that time. But remember, the current government, when you do IMF program, the money comes in tranches. It's not like COVID and the rest. No. It will come in tranches. Remember, they took over the ECF in 2017 because we planned it to overlap the elections so that we can prove that during elections you don't go on a frolic, which is a thing Ghana was known for, right? And that's where we targeted 5.9 right? But with all the set offsets and whatever, 6.1 still is impressive. The Fiscal Stabilization Responsibility Act is 5%, so 1.1% above it is, from a crisis of the sort, right? So if you look at all of this, yes, there was even a crisis, but look at the resources.
That came to them.
In addition to maybe 1/10 or so of the ECF that also came. Because they were the 7th and 8th review were done by the current government. So the tranches that came with it were the current government. And then you have the 3 oil fields, as I mentioned, topping it.
Yeah.
So apart from, the resources from all of that. So how couldn't we have managed? And that tells you that there was something wrong with the economy before COVID.
Oh, I have to take a break. But so far, we're talking about preparation for crisis. Was government prepared for the crisis? And the interesting part, my takeaway, and I'll come back and we'll explore that, is the fact that it says that even within the crisis, they still got more than any government has ever gotten for crisis. So we are ill prepared.
Probably except for HIPIC.
Except for HIPIC.
We brought in about that also will be debated because HIPIC brought in about just 3 or something billion. The whole debt forgiveness.
COVID had more.
Completely.
Well, we'll take a break. We'll be right back with our conversation with Honorable Seth Terkper.
Miato mi do to anyato ya Chicago club ro ye ya do go amanchinya gbogbo planyato fi to tui manyo apasa manyo apasa do badu ya ta mi do to.
Hello my brothers and sisters. 3 years ago, the sons and daughters of many women conspired to kill off this station and effectively deprive you, our wonderful listeners, of programs that you love. Thank God we are back. Amiko Kosato, I am back. So tune into your power station, Radio Gold 90.5 FM at 5:30 on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays to listen to the effusions of a complete villager. I promise to open my mouth wide without fear or favor and say it as it is, no matter who is involved. And if I were you, I'll bring my advertisements and place them right here for the best results. By the way, my name is Afo Dawubida Kosivi Kosiko Kosa Achka. Don't miss it. Catch you. Ever!
One station.
Accra 2022, 23, 24 and more. We don't chat, man, by Drema. Back live.
Commercial free.
Versus Mid-Morning Show.
Oh, we love what you have in Bad Drema. Mid-Morning Show.
The Mid-Morning Show.
Yes.
90.5.
Good morning, my neighbors. On Children by Drema.
Experience quality
Radio station.
Put your hands up.
Rave.
Yes.
Powerful. Morning vibes and more. Accra 90.5. We don't chat, man, by Drema.
Whoa, we love you.
Your Mid-Morning Show on Radio Go.
We are back like 100 times. 2 times bigger. 90.5.
All the things I know that you deserve.
Mid-Morning Show. Wait, don't tell me by Drema.
Wait a minute, Minka, I do wow.
And you miss me to Minka.
What do you mean, Cassie? Let it went to Minka.
Oh,
that would be bold.
CB men, any CB women capsules are your money won.
And then I'm Jabby Grammy.
I said one to Suma.
Yes, I know, oh. Ne friend and mamma confusion wrong. CB men, any CB women capsules that munomono. And where the gumono. The answer sign the package I have first that cry.
Hey, CB men, any CB women capsules are. Ama ya warrior so chain. And I face me rush.
Wow. Bro, where did that super? I pay for about more money for an unquada when you feel to me in Kaho. Our pharmacists, chemical herbal shops. At 4 numbers, so that I know. Offer Susie Herbal Center 0247 11 16 71 and now 0246 578750. Susie Anna
Ghana money, me madam was
FD, I just did the incredible.
Woko China Natural Clinic no uko hu die.
Sanya agro no mudin ho. Wo ye akọ pressure. Wo miamia won sam no nam keke. Hwim no yi yare no ko. Ajese so wo sa yare a won fa duro. Aduro de beka akura no kra herbal medicine. Na me se yare no wo twimu tawoboa. Wo be furu widiem.
China Natural Clinic.
Wo ye massaging, manual and electronic. Wo do to mpem atwetwewa ma widie no emu sanu si afom. Want to stress any pain so widie bu build da. Our ultramodern lab. Yeah, a check yare bia e wo mpanifo no kwadam. Wo circuit blood pressure, stroke and yare keka ho. China Natural Clinic.
Upe ye kira kwan ya ubehu ye e wa Hyiama Ajayi Kojo Sami Eje Street no. New Queen's Court School ana edi nhwene mu. Kumasi ye wo Santase Otenkwanta ye ne honorable Osache Mensa Bonso. Efie no ana edi nhwene mu. Na wo bankran ye wo pokwase kwabenya kwa no so. Total filling station ekiri pe. Ubehu ya so he no e wo ho no mo. Ubetumi afre wo ahomatrofo so 0244 435763 ana 0541023504. China na wayare safie papa.
Say, Masumba Jome, many langard for any chakabia. Order for several passasia mansu be anyone. Assassin one catasem edimu. Look no further. Hearts Builders Real Estate ever sorted out. Yawan Sassinabi was Shine Hills, 13,000 cities. Chopoli 20,000. Ningo Pram Pram. Plot size and a 70 by 100. By a deposit of 4,000 Ghana cities. Diakano, yes, spread them on. Let's Yanaka Pusumi Siatem. Who assassin the baby? Who Besidan Esisumawa. Hearts Builders Real Estate. Your right choice. Yet on plumbing materials bia. Ye delivery our and cry anytime. Yes, so your cleaning services BAB. Boho ye too. A juba bia for construction hono. Men kotu sikemu. For one Christmas promotion ya. Hearts Builders Real Estate at the Mount so. Freya CCR 0555 314 806 0241 665 200. Yawa Ashamai, Yani Mandela Park no eda edi enimshe. Hearts Builders Real Estate. We are your future planners.
Yeah, African Man original. Gary soakings for breakfast, noodles for supper. Gotta eat proper, but my pockets ain't dapper. Junk food, manics, economics is a bluffer. Need to go organic on my health, Mike. As I grew old, I was told to be tougher. Gotta shoot the 5 to survive, but I'm a rapper, no doubt.
Nothing says only 39 minutes, Bazi.
I'm going out like a sucker.
Seth Terkper is in the studio with me. Let me remind you that if you're having difficulties with your vision, that means you can't see clearly, you can't see from a distance, your vision is blurred, or you're having a persistent headache. There's a headache you've tried every medication for that is not working. Or you use glasses, you're due for a new pair. You need to replace the glasses you're using, the lenses in the glass, in the frame. Or you want to change your frame, you need a new frame, you need a new glass altogether. The place you need to go is Third Eye Care and Vision Center. Third Eye Care and Vision Center is your one-stop solution for all your eye care needs. With their ultramodern equipments, well-trained optometrists and staff, the best is assured. Third Eye Care and Vision Center provides comprehensive eye care for people of all ages, no matter what your age is. We'll check your eye for you, whatever the problem is. It is within their capacity to resolve it for you. They have in stock all kinds of spectacle lenses, spectacle frames, sunglasses, contact lenses, eye drops, among others. You can locate Third Eye Care at 2 places. They have 2 branches. The first one is at North Ridge, in the same premises with Sunny FM. The other one is at Airport Residential Area, which is opposite the Mirage Residence, close to the Association International School. Today is Wednesday, so they are already open. It's 8:41, so they've been open for 41 minutes now. For more information, call them 0245 93 8389 or 0543 28 70 Those are the numbers to call.
Might be tougher,
And let me also remind you that China Natural has opened a new ultramodern clinic in Kumasi to cater for the health needs of the good people of Asanteman and its environs. Healthcare like you've never seen before. It's not like the natural, you've been to herbal hospitals. But what will happen at China Natural is not what you're used to seeing. Because they use the massaging of the palms and foot for the treatment of blood pressure, kidney disorders, diabetes, stroke, and other diseases. They have treatment for sciatica, low sperm count, erectile dysfunction, menstrual disorders, among others. They also have an ultramodern laboratory. So when you go to China Natural, first thing they will test, diagnose you, whatever your problem is, before they start treating you. And all their medicines are natural and herbal. And of course, the people who work there are highly qualified professionals. They will see to your well-being. Don't forget that. And in this crisis, first thing you're thinking about is affordability. Yes, very, very affordable healthcare. You can afford it. All their services and medicines are affordable. You can locate them. New ultramodern branch is at Santasi Otenkwanta. Santasi Otenkwanta in Kumasi. At Pokwasi, they are at ACP. Pokwasi Ace in Accra, they are at Pokwasi ACP Kwabenya Road, behind the Total Filling Station. Accra at Pokwasi ACP Kwabenya Road, behind the Total Filling Station. Ashaiman, they are at Ajekojo. Call them 0244 43 57 63 or 054 102 3504 or 024 47 15004. I still have in the studio with me Honorable Seth Terkper. We are having a discussion on the economy. Honorable, thank you once again. We're talking about the matter of preparation for crisis, and let's continue from there. Because from listening to you, so one, from everything that you've read from their budget since they came in, they had the monies to prepare better or stock the funds better than you did. But are you suggesting that they did not do that from all evidence you've seen?
Well, the evidence speaks for itself. You just have to look at the budget. The sinking fund is, if you look at the medium term, supposed to be zero by 2020. In the last budget, the medium term, sinking fund will be zero. The stabilization fund has been stagnating at, 250, and we're waiting to see whether the recent increase in crude prices, which was admitted to have boosted revenue, whether the portion of the revenue that should have gone into the stabilization fund, is being kept, but that will be belated. Okay. But we're talking about the past. Yes, they were depleted. The contingency fund was never restored. We took part of the money for the Kwame Nkrumah Circle disaster back in 2015. It was to be restored. It was used as a conduit for taking money out of the stabilization fund. Much of the money that went into the COVID from the stabilization fund was taken to the contingency fund through the and it just went through. So yes, the buffers that we built, I don't know. Remember the flows from the VAT and the ABFA into the infrastructure fund were stopped, and then only since 2017 and were supposed to be restored only last year. So much of what is being spent was the $250 million US, which was from a bond that we did, which was to leverage for the development of Airport City 2 and others, which today has not been done. So, the facts speak for itself. But you see, let me give you one example. During the global financial crisis, even the US was caught flat-footed. Because the last major crisis, was during the Great Depression. Okay. And a lot, there was some banks even fell in the US and whatever. Now, the major measure they put in place was what they call quantitative easing, which is they bought, like our T-bills. The central bank bought back, businesses that were holding, including private debt, public debt, and so all those. So they sort of bought them to keep the economy going. And then when the economy became good again, they sold it on the stock exchange. And they made a profit of about $3 trillion US. That's the Fed. What did they do? All that money was passed on. That's the central bank. Not all, after expenses and other things. About $3 trillion US. This was published in Bloomberg, so I can show the source. It was given to the Treasury. The Treasury did not spend. Given their experience with the global financial crisis, the world's richest treasury decided to put it as a buffer. That's what you call budget buffers and stabilizers. Come COVID, that's how come the US was nimble to support pharmaceuticals and everything to develop the vaccines.
Because they built buffers.
Because they were better prepared than they were with the global financial crisis. Right? And it was with hindsight, with all of this in mind, that, the main advocates, and indeed, there were people in Parliament now and then who bought into the idea. You remember our debate on the PRMA, Revenue Management Act, Petroleum Revenue Management, was one of the longest. And it went to, if you remember, the one who led it was the minister of an advisor, from the Kufuor era, Dr. Marco Tufo, went around the country. I was then a deputy. And there was a whole conference, if you remember. Norway gave us assistance, their experts came and everything at the conference center before the law went to Parliament. And we said never again. Nigerians even came to tell about their experience and all that. Remember when they had their oil, Ghanaians were flocking to Nigeria. And they were building infrastructure and the rest. So I'm saying that even the world's advanced economies prepare for crisis. And another good example, remember the PIGS, the countries that were called the PIGS. That derogatory terms. Portugal, Ireland, Greece, Spain. They were forced to the fund during the global financial crisis because of risks within the EU, where Germany, in particular, was also reeling, so they couldn't provide the necessary. They were forced to the fund. Come COVID, did you hear any of those countries going to get a loan from the bank? They prepared better. Because for them as an advanced country, it's a shame. Because yes, the fund is there, and that is the fund is there for even advanced economies. That's the role of the fund. Because it was created with the World Bank after the World War to help particularly rebuild Europe. So you can think about the rebuilding today of, say, Ukraine after the war. And that was the purpose, out of which, the Marshall Plan and other things came in. Right? What Germany did, Germany was devastated. But what they did was to put part of that money aside, which I am told, is the seed capital and whatever that went into KfW, which today is giving us, assistance and all that. So there are all these examples. So if we have been facing our crisis, we should also learn to prepare for the crisis. And even though this was debated among the government and the opposition at the time, we just repeated it. As a result of which, more crisis is facing us, from Ukraine to whatever. Nobody knows. The advanced countries are increasing interest rates to fight inflation themselves, and that means that the cost of borrowing will be higher even if we had access to the markets. So we should be preparing. We should learn from this and prepare. And that's what we call counter-cyclical policies.
You had to use a bond. You have to put portions of a bond into some of these funds.
Yes, as I said, the entire $1 billion we borrowed in 2015 at 10.2, not a penny. And the reason we went for the 10.2 was that we had issued those bonds in 2011, 2012, the domestic ones, apart from the first sovereign bond I mentioned, right? If you issued a 3-year bond in 2010, 2011. They will fall due in 2013, 2014.
Okay.
Right. If you issue a 5-year bond, domestic bond, in let's say those ones started I think 2011 or 2012, they will fall due 5 years later, 2015, 2016, and 2017.
Okay.
So you had to do something about them.
Okay.
And so the entire 1 billion, which is the one the World Bank guaranteed, which according to Fitch is the only one that may be spared from, when they were doing their downgrade. That was the only one that was possible because it was backed by the World Bank. The entire 1 billion was used for refinancing those domestic bonds. And then the part of it went into 200 million went into refinancing the first sovereign bond.
Okay.
So it was reduced to 550. Remember, it was 750.
Yeah.
And then we used a sinking fund. So what we told the markets was we would make sure that this does not happen again, where we have so much debt accumulating at a point in time. And so we started a sinking fund, which was built for the stabilization. And we had a trajectory to take off our bonds and the ones we were refinanced over a period of 12 years, 12 to 15 years, which was the duration of that World Bank bond.
The plan was to take off all those bonds using the sinking fund.
Yes.
What was the money supposed? Because you used the bond initially. The sinking fund was supposed to.
The sinking fund was oil money, which was building in the stabilization fund. Okay. And the law says that if you cap the stabilization fund, you can only use it for two purposes: contingency fund, which is in the constitution, which we had never established, or debt management.
Okay.
And because we had a debt crisis, sinking fund also in the constitution, which we had never established.
Okay.
So we decided to set up this because the crisis facing us at the time, and it's going to happen in 2025.
So
the zero coupon bond is 2025. And then, so if you said, yes, the zero coupon bond.
The famous zero coupon bond is 2025.
Yes, 2025. And then you have others which will pile up 2026. So we are repeating the same thing again, just because we did not with 3 OFAs. So that's the source of the money from Jubilee alone. And then, so we had projected for the markets that with 10 field and Sankofa, the sinking fund would even go up more.
And that's you have more money in the sinking fund to be able to
pay up to about 70-75% of all the bonds that we had issued and going forward. And as you do it, you always have debt. So if the one you are rolling over is 20-25%, it's manageable than 100%.
You said the law that was passed had a whole bipartisan buy-in. So essentially, it means that those who were in parliament on the MPP side at the time thought it was a great idea. So when they won power, I thought the only thing that came to your mind was they were going to continue.
Absolutely, because they were part of it. I mean, I don't want to be so personal, but yes, it was a vigorous debate, including winnowing, including. But remember also that some of the thinking, right? Some of the thinking for what we did was after oil was discovered, and President Kufuor put a team together to see how we could utilize. We only legislated it and added to it. And so there was knowledge, And as I said, we had Trinidad and Tobago, they were here. Long before Republic Bank, which is from, Norway funded most of, the trips. And we did a tour of the country. So that's how oil revenue should be.
A whole work was
CSOs. Yeah, a whole work, CSOs. Prof put in a whole work, and the economic management team presided by President Mahama at the time, was in the one that took charge. And every clause was debated in detail. One of the longest to be determined was, what do you do when you take the stabilization fund? We don't want it to go into consumption. So it's an irony, to be asking to take heritage fund and all those things for consumption.
Well, so there we are. But a couple of things too, because when you listen to them, one of the things they've always said is that they inherited an IMF program from you.
With the money?
Yes. Well, I hear you only took one tranche.
We took part, I think 2015, 1 or 2 tranches, yes.
Okay. they inherited an IMF program from you. They claim the economy you left them was in a very bad state.
How could you have gone from 2.8 new basis or 3.6 new basis to 7% in a year? What magic did you perform? Was it not due to the 3 oil fields? Did they put the money in the 3 oil fields? I think we should stop listening to these things that is just depressing to the NDC.
There's also...
And how did it come? And how come the growth was oil growth and the non-oil growth was flat? And how come the magic was not repeated when they faced their own crisis? 0.4, we almost went into recession. And yet we are told, oh, it never happened, COVID and all that. And in spite of all that resources which I've mentioned, they could not match the 2.8 or 3.6. How much resources did we get? In 2016, when we did 3.6, and they said it was dismal. Old basis at 2.8, new basis. Sub-Saharan Africa was performing below. So I know we shouldn't buy into those things. This is a period for reflection. Okay. Yes. We shouldn't buy into those things.
Because they also then talk about the fact that you left them significant bills in terms of contracts that were awarded that had to be paid for.
Do you remember the enhanced road levy, which was part of ESLA? How much has that money come in? I don't have the statistics here, but I can tell you that ESLA has brought in over 25 billion. I think that number is going around to date. And ESLA is going to bring in 53 billion Ghana cedis because they extended it beyond the 5 years and even increased the ESLA. It's going to bring 53 billion Ghana cedis. All that money is by 2025. All that money is collateralized today. It's paying debt. Where did that money go? Where did the enhanced road levy? Where is the, how come we couldn't pay the depositors? Right? Because if ESLA, which was to underwrite the public sector debt, which was owed to the banks, which you remember we did the first one, and we brought VRA, which borrowed from the banks, and the banks together. Right, then we refinanced 2.2 billion. That's a refinancing our ESLA. Yes. We even got some haircuts. Interest rates were reduced and all that. And then there was a term sheet to pay off the IPP debt, $600 million US. Afraism, the same Afraism we've now gone to borrow is very expensive. And you can Google.
You gave them what they needed to pay off.
I'm saying you can Google. You Google 2017 April. Both the Minister of Finance and the Vice President were in Washington, D.C. Their very first spring meetings of the same IMF, promising that the money was there to pay off, the banking sector and energy sector debts. The source was ESLA. How come it wasn't paid? And by the way, if you have 25 billion and you claim that, the banking sector costs and, cost you 14 billion, why didn't you use the money to pay? Who are you paying cash? So why didn't you use the money to pay? Why do you collateralize it? Right? You see, we talk about the banking sector debt without talking about the asset that was left to pay for it.
So you gave them enough to be able to take care of any other...
Again, absolutely, because that parliament, you remember, was very tight and it was very, very strict. That parliament was very strict. So we were made to quantify all the debts for the energy sector and road levy. And before we left, apart from... we started paying down the road, the contractors, 1 billion. My colleague Husseini with the road fund. They can come here and challenge it. We started paying it. From a 1 billion loan that we took, just as we, from the ESLA. So a loan was taken to pay. That was not exhausted. It was also handed over.
Well, let me also go back to this issue that, in fact, you mentioned it a couple of times. You say when the COVID, because, of course, the explanation for everything that we are facing currently are COVID, Russia, and Ukraine. So when COVID came, it came with resources. And you sound as if you had those monies and you were managing COVID, we won't be facing the kind of crisis
I'm
we are
saying
facing
that
now.
I'm saying that if we had continued even building the stabilization fund, and let's take a simple arithmetic. After all, let's say absolute, the maximum we're supposed to get from crude oil was 120,000 barrels per day. We never got it. That was from Jubilee.
You never got the 120,000.
No, we never hit even 100. So the average, by the time we're living off, was 70. And I'm saying that with all this, right, we started building the stabilization fund. And it is credible that 250 million plus, or close 300, was left. It's in the budget, you can check. Right? So if you are getting 2 times more, or 3 times more, 70 to 100 and what? 90,000, almost 200,000. What if you had also added twice what we left? That would be 750 million. That's what we would have done.
Okay.
Maybe $1 billion. So there would have been no need to go to the fund for even a COVID loan. Maybe at the test started worsening.
Okay.
Yes, that was the trajectory because it was a counter-cyclical policy. It was a buffer for crisis, born out of our experience with the crude oil price and with, the global financial crisis. Right? So, and then the SDR would have come in. But if we had gone for it, so you can imagine, it would have topped up. It would have been more nimble. Yes, and the economy wouldn't have continued to slide. That I can say for sure. Because the money came in Forex. I remember when we took the money, the ECF, it went to Bank of Ghana for foreign budget support.
Mm.
The money that came to the budget and the program came from the World Bank, African Development Bank, and the rest.
Okay.
But the ones that came in, the ECF, after, part of it was used to support the budget. So what was it in the budget? It's expenditure, high expenditure. That's our problem. So all these monies were going to finance all those, expenditures, and then when they were exhausted, we started borrowing 2.2 billion to support free SHS and all that. It's unsustainable. And so if the program, I said recently that what we need is a solid program. We don't need a speedy program.
We need a, and I'll come back to that. But I'm saying, are you suggesting that if you were finance minister, you wouldn't have needed even the monies that we took?
No, I'm telling you, well, you can never predict the future.
Okay.
But I'm telling you that, and mind you, the credit is to the cabinet and to the leader of the cabinet. Mm. And I'm telling you what we planned and what we achieved with it.
Okay.
And as you yourself said, during the period when we even had our crisis, we fastened our belt and we continued building those funds because of experience.
Okay.
And there's no country, like middle income, global financial crisis. You know, one of the centers for finance. You remember the Emirates. They went into their sovereign wealth fund to support the global financial crisis. That's why they never took a big hit. They used to give the oil money away, petrodollar, invest in Dubai everywhere, until they use it to build, to start building Dubai today into a very winsome financial center. Yeah. So others have done it, and it's something which you can talk about the BRICS. Don't we all know 40 years ago, China was a developing country? What were the mechanisms they put in place? Ghana had NIB before CDB. NIB was 65 or what? CDB was 1992. So even for our predecessors in terms of that, yes, self-financing, which we were doing for Terminal 3 and all those things, Nkrumah did it. There was no British money that was used for the dam. It was a World Bank loan. It was a World Bank loan, and Kaiser then came in to put in, the smelter and all those things. VRA was the one that was paying for the dam.
Okay.
Self-financing. Ports and Harbors Authority. You can interview the current chairman of the NDC. He was the chairman of the board. He came to my office to discuss. We will ring-fence the forex revenue, that GPR. You can talk to Ria Namu. Self-financing. So I'm only saying that if those and the successes are there, and I've pointed them, 550 million. In fact, out of the 550 million for the sovereign bond, The current administration was the one that used 200 million of that 500 million to pay off the bond, the balance left of 200 million on the anniversary, October 4th, 2017, of the bond. There was no mention in the budget in November. So you can, I'm giving you the facts so you can judge for yourself when I say that, the country was being prepared because we had become middle income. Right? So when you become middle income, you look at what middle income countries do and prepare the country as such. Of course, I understand the way that it's not even within our own party that it wasn't possible for everybody to envisage because it's part of a certain exposure, working in the Croatia and others, which after the Soviet Union fell and seeing what they were doing to become EU members today. Yeah. So that exposure, doing missions into some other countries. So we needed to put a program together. And so what I'm talking to you is a homegrown policy, which we did and used for negotiations, with the IMF.
I'll come to in terms of a policy we may be taking to the IMF. But currently, everyone, including myself, including yourself, you are paying very high prices for food. For anything you're buying, the price is going up. You're seeing businessmen who are angry enough to close shops, even in protest of tax measures being put forward by the GRA, where I think they've become very aggressive at this time, trying to ensure that they get every revenue that is due them. What is happening?
The taxes that were given away with fanfare in 2017. I described them that they were popular moves, but we should be careful with popular moves. So you don't undermine the tax base. During your crisis, you'll be going for extreme measures. Right. So I think that what should come out of this is a reflection.
Okay.
Because everybody has gone through some of what you've mentioned, every government. I remember I was experiencing it firsthand. When queues were being made for kinky, raw kinky, before it's even cooked, coming out of, the era that gave us ERP, SAP, and I worked, in that environment, early days, long queues coming from Masaka, I used to live in Nasoma. So it seems as if, these things have not happened to the country before. But the thing is to learn from it, which I think is what, remember we're talking taxes, and to his memory, Professor Mills was commissioner. When the IRS was taken from the civil service, he was the chairman of the board and saw these things. Mr. Tuahoy was then head of the National Revenue Secretariat that put all of these structures in place. So is it any wonder that when Professor Mills became president, we set up the GRA properly, and we merged IRS, and the VAT service, where I used to work before I left the country, and we brought all the laws into the new era, oil era, all the tax laws and everything. How come West Blue, single window, now ICOMS? Those were all initiatives, first generation, second generation. Why were they stopped? Why was the automation of the domestic tax service, the domestic taxes stopped after the customs one from 2017? Because today nothing is being linked. You see, there's the app. I heard about, the invoices, electronic invoices. Yeah, it's an app. But where is the base? Where's the domestic tax base to process them? When those results, they are sitting in somebody's private, server. Sitting on somebody's private server. I stand for correction. I can be corrected. But I'm not aware that the system has been put in place for GRA. Since 2017. That was the revenue modernization phase 2. Phase 1 was the ICOMS and all those. Sorry, was the reforms that were done, under, West Blue and the single window and all that. Yes. So the phase 2 was to be domestic, so that they'll have an interface. So we should return to those structural measures.
But I was asking, so what is the problem with our economy now?
High expenditure.
High expenditure.
Living beyond our means. Look, your deficit is revenue. Simple arithmetic. Your deficit is revenue brought in by GRA, DVLA, and all those, minus expenditure. It's like a household. Your shortfall, which forces you to go and borrow as a household, is because the salary is not enough and you go and borrow. Okay. Then you need to make up for some expenditure. We're talking about school fees and all those things. Those are, but it becomes dangerous when you start borrowing for food. You see, you'll be planning to borrow for school fees, for furniture. You go to the bank and then you pay over time. When you start borrowing for food in the household, when you start borrowing for your normal transport, even when you start borrowing, and pardon me, I'm not being, to buy fuel in your vehicle.
Okay.
Right. The principle is that those things, as much as possible, should be covered. And then you borrow for the big things, mortgages, houses, furniture, and the rest. We have come to a situation where interest payment and compensation alone, expenditures, we've not brought in the flagship projects and cannot even be paid out of the total revenue that we are collecting. So that's the problem in the economy. They are not, we've been talking about them. So there's nothing, So you are borrowing. You're borrowing to finance free estate. You're borrowing to finance so many things. You are giving tax concessions, giving away the tax base. And the tax base has become stagnant. So, borrowing. And when you borrow, because you've also stopped sinking fund, you've stopped stabilization fund and whatever, you are borrowing and you are not reducing the debt. So it balloons. And so, downgrades. So that's the problem with the economy. And then, you rely on Bank of Ghana. From financing 10 billion Ghana cedis in 2020, this year, by the time the media review was financed, they had financed 22 billion out of the 37 billion deficit. 3 quarters.
So the issue is the decisions made since 2017.
Remember that was from zero financing in 2016.
Yes, 2016. I think now. So from zero financing, we are now financing. You're saying almost 2/3 of the budget
of the deficit.
Of the deficit is being financed by the Bank of Ghana.
Yeah. So if you want to look at it, the revenue is supposed it's now been reduced to about 90.
Yeah.
So if you take it 22, let's take it even what will come, it will be maybe 80. So 22, that is one quarter of what GRA is supposed to be bringing. It's coming from Bank of Ghana to hold the budget.
So the decisions we've made since 2017, the monies we've brought in, the way we spend those monies, the kind of tax measures, I recall the jubilation in Abosoka about the fact that taxes were being reduced, among others. Those are all decisions that are culminating to what we see currently.
You see, we have not. Yes, there is so much talk about what was done in 2017. Personal income tax was increased by the current government to 35% from 25 and then 30 or something. Yeah, but there was a hue and cry, so it was brought down. The refund and credits that businesses used to get for Get Fund and NHI, which was part of VAT, was stopped.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reasons for the inflation. I can count them about, levies. We have about 13 levies now on our books. It's not just year levy, environmental levy. There's the temporary ones that we normally use to manage in crisis, COVID levy, FinSec levy, whatever. I listed them by levy. So we keep talking about what was given. We are not talking about what has been. Well, yeah. What is plaguing businesses now?
Okay.
Yeah. ESLA. Wasn't the rate increase? Wasn't the period extended? And the portion of ESLA, that should have been used, which was being ring-fenced to pay subsidy in periods like this, was collateralized. That is the simple reason why you cannot reduce. You have to pass on all the crude oil costs to consumers. One of the reasons.
So, because you're now talking about levies being part of the problem, and I think was
no, yeah. I mean, and answer to your question, you know, that even though I said that the taxes were reduced with farm fare, quietly they were being reintroduced and even more. So we have been on a tax increase, not a reduction.
So, and this is where the challenge is. You're talking about 3 oil fields. Crude was performing better. Our cocoa was doing well. In terms of at least the revenues.
At the time crude oil hit $100, you know, 9900, it went up to I think 115.
Yeah.
You know, under Jubilee. That's when we built most of the buffers.
And I'm saying they've seen all that. In fact, revenue, they've got more revenue than you did. I recall how Dr. Baumia.
More money from the
yes.
IMF after we were wind of the IMF.
Yeah. So all that put together, how does that still... This still brings us to the problem because you're saying our expenditure.
Yeah, it's expenditure stupid. Excuse my language. Americans say yes.
Expenditure stupid.
Yes.
But these monies have been spent on, in some cases, one district, one factory, one village, one dam. Projects that they said emanated from $1 million per constituency.
Yeah, from loans which we were not repaying, and today we can go back to those sources to borrow the loan, to borrow the money.
Could we have done better?
Look at the record. Certainly we could. That's why I've taken listeners through. You know, yeah. The record and what was inherited and where we are today, and the resources that have flowed for, you know, just, you know, COVID.
Well, if you just join us, I'm having a conversation with Honorable Seth Terkper. I've decided to ask a lot of questions from his era because first, when this government came to power, first thing they started doing was to blame them for everything. Now it's Russia, COVID, Russia, Ukraine, and COVID. But I wanted to find out from you, does that add up in any way to you? Because you also talk about external pressures. They say Russia, COVID, Ukraine.
I am not downplaying them.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that every government has had its share. Did anybody, maybe if it were quantified back then, did anybody quantify the cost of bushfires to us? We devastated our cocoa farms. It wasn't just Galamsey that destroyed the cocoa farms. First, it was bushfires. And I come from Somalia. Up there, there was a very thick, because there's a village in there, you go through the forest. It was a forest reserve. Now you can see from the forest, you know, fires, you know, it's almost like grass. It's now that the trees are coming up. Because you see, when the trees are bent, you know, we learn to go and burn charcoal, we need to go and do all those, and then it continues. So the green is just I'll show you. It used to be nice green, you know, because the portion that is above Somalia and Dumasi were forest reserves. And that's the reason Somalia did not develop into the mountains like you have Dukrom and the rest. Yes, but I'm saying that, did we quantify the droughts from the Rawlings era into the Kufuor era? Remember the prayers at the Kosomo Dam? Yeah. Remember those days? I always say, you know, which I knew, you pick the daily graphic, you look to the corner first because it told you the level of the dam and the potential for doomsday back then. We didn't call it doomsday and all that. So every government has had its crisis. And I'm saying even advanced countries are learning to manage crisis better. And we put them in law. So why don't we, if we had adhered to them, maybe we wouldn't be where we are today.
You said this is a time for reflection.
Yeah.
Reflection for, is it for the managers of the economy or for everyone?
For everyone. For the use of our resources, for everybody. You know, yes. And it's time to tell maybe next year is the 40th anniversary of what? Can you guess?
Is
2023. ERP-SAP was launched in 1983.
Okay.
Was this what we envisaged to come
the
to
economic
40
recovery
years?
project?
Yes, economic recovery program and structural adjustment program.
Okay.
Is this what was envisaged? We would be in 40 years back then, because it came with a lot of sacrifice.
Well, now let's move on to okay. So now the IMF is the solution we are jumping on. But before that, you always talked about homegrown policies. So what that meant is that when you face your crisis, first thing you do was to start working on resolving it internally. Have you seen that so far? That there are solutions being deployed?
I mean, no, our very first solution was to go back to the IMF, which we are winning ourselves off, to take a $1 billion, dollar loan. Mm-hmm. Immediately, we said we had win ourselves 2018, 2019 yes. Of the IMF. Yeah.
But that was for COVID.
Yeah, but it was a program. The only reason it didn't come in tranches, right, is because it is designed as an emergency fund, but it's a program. RCF is a facility. The official name is RCF, Rapid Credit Facility. Mm-hmm. You remember what we did was Enhanced Credit Facility. Okay. Yes. The only thing is that, the fund is disbursed, not in tranches, but,
it's given
upfront,
to you. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And usually designed for central banks, but we took part of it into the budget. So we went straight. We didn't send them. Of course, we fell on our buffer, which was 250 million in the stabilization fund. That is evidence that we could have prepared better with 3 oil firms.
So that didn't work. We took a loan from the IMF, and fell on our buffer. We're still in this crisis.
And we took a ECF, we took the SDR, mm-hmm. 1 billion. Mm-hmm. We went to Bank of Ghana, 1.7 billion US dollars. 10 billion, which today is 22 billion. So how come with all this didn't work?
So we've started dealing with this crisis for a long time.
Yeah, from the borrowing.
But was taking more money and
I remember during that period, just let's not forget, but during that period, our inability to go to the bond market, was 2021.
Okay.
Yes. Remember, we were able to do 3 billion. We were even going to do 5 billion. Mm-hmm. So we were taking loans in addition. In 2020, we were taking loans. But most of it was going for refinancing, which is what we face today. Today, the domestic market government goes, borrows, let's say 100, and maybe 95 is for paying old debt or refinancing old debt. So the breakdown of the sinking fund stabilization and all those are things we need to be reflecting on. Otherwise, oil will be just like gold, which you want to collateralize.
But could those monies have solved the problem?
They could have minimized them. Nobody's, look, I'm not underestimating, COVID. Otherwise, I'll be insincere in saying that we also face crisis or somebody else face crisis. But I can say for certain that we could have been managed better. And that's the essence of the fund. Okay. That's why they call some of their facilities standby facilities.
So the problem was the management of the monies.
Yes. The management of the expenditure, living beyond your means. And I gave you, we were supposed to do 200 schools. Could have borrowed the roof to do it. Right? But we wanted we saw a more stable, approach to borrowing, and we could then go and borrow and pay down, borrow, pay down, borrow, pay down. And that's what, when you talk about, things like the 10-year U.S. bond being the benchmark for the markets and whatever, the U.S. was not fun with bonds. It was Hamilton, the Treasury Secretary, who is honored, who introduced bonds to pay for the war, and they continue to borrow for their infrastructure. But they paid back, road tolls and the rest. That's the beauty of U.S. infrastructure. Alexander Hamilton.
So IMF, that's the solution we need. The IMF quite
well. That's what I was saying. The fund is there to help governments.
Okay.
And as member states, when we talk homegrown, we shouldn't rule out, ever going to the fund. Okay. No. Right? And my reason is this. I give you the example of Even some of the advanced countries during the global financial crisis went back, but they learned to get out fast. I think Ireland got out within 1.5 years. And that's because they started falling. And Greece had the worst of the problem, you remember?
Yes.
Almost like a laughing. Yeah, they went out of it. And once upon a time, the IMF was providing colonial era. We were providing the resources that was needed for the advanced countries to stabilize, but they learned to build. You know, China, up to, I don't know if they are still doing it, still borrowed from the World Bank. That's why being the second largest economy, because there are large parts of China which are, you know, which could do with soft loans to develop. So when things are going beyond your effort, after trying, after doing your buffers and whatever, that's when you go to the fund. And then when things are good, then you build the buffers again, and then you reduce the borrowing.
Okay.
You know, and you can do another thing. Kenya was doing it. They call it PSI. In fact, that's what the program we would have preferred, you know, together with the homegrown policy. But because because budget support was withdrawn for us until we went to the fund, that's why, you know. And so, well, that discussion, I think, is well known, right? But what you could do also is that, whether you like it or not, the IMF, you are a member country, they'll come and do Article 4. So you turn into what you call the PSI, Policy Support Instrument, where you have your own measures, you invite a fund as part of Article 4. You know, it's like a review, another fund, and they'll give you their comments and suggestions.
Okay.
But you don't go for the money until you really need the money, even if you have the money. You do the PSI, Policy Support Instrument, but with a standby that in the event that we'll need it, we'll come for it. Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm just reading.
So pragmatically, the fund is a resource. Of course,
that you cannot avoid.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I do my ideological friends. I know some of them. Yeah.
Well, I'll come to that because it was one of the questions I was coming to ask you. Well,
I'm reminded about my ideological friends.
Yes.
So yes.
This is okay. I think this is also from the fund. In their regional economic outlook, this is what they say: with the rapid pickup in global inflation, monetary policy normalization in advanced economies has sped up. In this context, capital flows have remained precarious. For the first half of the year, outflows from the sub-Saharan Africa rivaled those associated with the onset of the COVID-19 crisis or the 2015 commodity price shocks.
It's good they are mentioning 2015 commodity price shocks, because this was belittled.
Yes.
You know, that you could never compare. Yes, so it's good that it's been mentioned. And you saw that was the one that, you know, we took a hit, and then we started trimming down, and we were accused of inefficiency, incompetence, and all that. So I'm glad that the fund is now mentioning it.
Okay, so now we're still with the IMF. You said it's a good resource for you when you are in this kind of situation. You've tried all you can.
Yeah, when you tried all you can.
Have we tried all we can?
If without the buffers, how can you try as well as you can? And without utilizing all the 6 billion plus, which I was talking about. Right, so I leave that judgment. You know, I'm just, you know, sometimes I leave the judgment to the public. Just state your facts and let it, yes.
So without the buffers?
Without the buffers and without proper utilization of the 6 billion and whatever, yeah, you would definitely be in this situation. I remember the downgrades and whatever, being alert to them and all that, yeah.
So basically, we didn't put ourselves in a situation to deal with this, but at this point in time, to you, the IMF is the best place, the best people to help us.
Again, ideologically, what's the alternative?
Okay.
You know, what we are seeing is a replay of ERP SAP. And it's for me, it's something, you know, on an ideological basis, that it is the other market economy that said they were not going to, you know, market-oriented party that said they were not going to the fund. Adamantly, yes. So, which was, you know, the early thinking around the, you know, ERP SAP. But when you are squeezed, you have to go. What's the alternative? That's the question. Sometimes, so it becomes a pragmatic decision to take.
Because now a lot of talk is about the 3 billion that we are going for. Is that really what the focus should be on?
Where's the plan? You know, that's a question. You know, the point is, where's the plan? So, in the absence of our own plan, then we should wait for the IMF to see what's in their document, because they want their money paid back. They want discipline to be restored. So we just have to wait. We are told that some document was given today. It will be in the, in the document that goes to the board. So we'll scrutinize it and then we'll discuss it. By the moment, I haven't seen any government plan on the table for us to have a discussion of it.
Because I've heard of an enhanced, economic recovery?
Yeah, it was mentioned before, even the media review was read.
But you haven't seen it?
No. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it. I've heard about it. It's mentioned constantly.
Usually they would give it to the media, yeah. So maybe it's being treated, confidentially. That's the right of government. Maybe it's been given to the fund, which happens in many countries also. But ours was debated in Parliament. But it's a loan, so it will be debated in Parliament.
But is it advisable to draw up a plan waiting on the IMF? Because as we speak, the problems continue. We are still suffering. Why won't we start some work on that plan? Or at this point, we are helpless.
But this is we are waiting for the IMF. This is we are waiting for the IMF. I left my glasses. This is IMF.
Okay.
What I'm showing you. We are not in the right? And this is staff report. IMF staff report.
Okay.
For the 2021 Article 4 consultation. Brackets, debt sustainability analysis.
Yeah.
They did a debt sustainability in 2021.
2021, okay.
Yes, and they said the risk of external debt distress is high. The overall risk of debt distress, right? High. Granularity in the risk ratings, sustainable. But we know the ratings now. The risk ratings featured, and yes, we know where we are, yes. Application of judgment, no. Right? And if I may just take, some of time, external and overall debt are at high risk of debt distress. The external rating results from breaches of the present value. That is, they take a present value from maybe 25 years or to 15 years. External debt to GDP until 2020. Breaches. Let me go back. The external rating results from breaches of the present value, that PV of external debt to GDP until 2022, and breaches for the debt until 2029. Sorry, I'm not in my glasses.
Okay.
And breaches for the debt service to export and debt service to revenue over the full time horizon. So this was 2021, right? And on and on. And I think the last time, and so there are, and they have their conclusions from that. The debt sustainability analysis mainly covers public and private. We know that, but now they are talking about Cocoa Board. They are talking about, so it's not just a core government that is under consideration. They gave a hint in 2021, right? And they say the financial sector cleanup costs and energy sector losses highlight, risks associated with off-balance sheet liabilities. Remember, we said in the studio?
Yes.
Showing things below the line?
Yes, they said they were reporting below the line. Yeah.
Precisely. We were talking about all this, a while ago. That's, why are you putting it this way when other governments have added it? Yeah. The DSA models contingent fiscal liabilities from the financial sector, SOEs, and PPPs in a stress, that's the IPPs and the rest. Yeah. They are in a stress test. When the DSA stress test reveal that test, that growth, exports, commodity prices, and market access shocks are the most relevant for Ghana. So this is on the table.
Growth, exports,
commodities. Yes, the things that would help the economy grow and reduce the debt or bring down the debt. So growth is a factor.
Okay.
Exports is a factor. When you take foreign loans, of course you have to pay. So your ability to generate
growth,
income.
But the last time we grew at over 5%, right?
Yeah, but it's not just the economy when it comes to debt. It's not just the growth.
Okay.
Because if you are growing and you are not generating revenue, because your GRA is weak. If you are growing, maybe because of oil, you know, but others like gold and others are not, and the exports are not coming in, and imports are high.
Okay.
Right. Then there's a vulnerability there.
Because they talk about export commodity prices.
Yeah. No. Yes. No exports and then commodity prices.
Because
which is like what we are talking. What we are facing today, 2021, like the high crude oil prices, and then you know, other inflation, imported inflation, and the rest. Yeah, that's what.
So what else we have?
So they are saying, sorry. So they're saying, and market access. We know it already. We are no longer in the market.
We don't have market access here.
Are the most relevant for Ghana.
Okay, so we've lost market access.
So what the assessment? So the assessment the fund is doing, if whether you give them a document or not, is that they have this. So they are doing the assessment. They are saying, okay, since this was done only last year, what has been the developments? I mean, they know it from Fitch. They don't have to get it from us.
So if they do a debt sustainability analysis, because last year when they did it,
so
you are saying they are
So that means
they had high risk of debt.
Sustainable, we had high risk of, yes.
Now, so basically we are now in debt distress.
Yeah. Because remember they're saying that we could be hitting 90, 95, 90, 104.
That is what the World Bank says, 104.
Yes, and the IMF says it could be 90.4. Not making adjustments for the contingent liability. I believe the World Bank included contingent liabilities.
So where we are now, I know you've done some work during your time with the IMF. You did some work in some countries. Have you seen this kind of situation before? Have you dealt with one before?
I was in the fiscal affairs department dealing mainly with revenue, but because of my accounting, but the fiscal affairs deals with all these things. But we also accompanied missions.
Okay.
Because if the program says your revenue, you should do something about your revenue. It's not the Africa department which is leading the mission. That aspect of the program will be referred to the fiscal affairs department, where the revenue experts are.
Are we within? Would we have fallen in your department?
Oh, definitely. They've been. You see, they don't come only when you have a program. In fact, we have one of the centers which the IMF devolved right in Accra, the Regional Technical Assistance Center, which is sitting somewhere in, I believe, Reach.
Okay.
Not the other Reach. Yes. Right, and the World Bank office and the rest, they are there to provide. So they provide technical assistance. So they advise us, for example, with setting up GRA. That's the work, some of us were doing there. You travel to countries to help them, put these things in place. So that side of the fund is often not well known. Yes. Give me. The fund was there. The World Bank was there. In fact, the facility came from World Bank. And they are fiscal affairs and other, they were there to help us. But you don't have a program, so those things are silent. They come in quietly, they go.
They do the assessment.
Make governments, then they go back.
Based on what you just read, they came in for a debt sustainability analysis. From what we're hearing, we are told that they will look at everything.
Yeah, they look at everything. They are saying that the debt situation is critical. And also remember they are going to give you a loan, and that loan must be paid. So if you are not able to pay other loans, what's the guarantee that the fund will? You can prioritize it.
Okay.
But you just be crowding other loans that should be paid. That's why the debt sustainability analysis
will be done.
Has to be done. Right. But it's going to cover everything. And in our case, the fund normally covers the monetary and the fiscal. The World Bank comes in to do the real sector. So, for example, the energy programs and things, that's why we had a partial risk guarantee from the World Bank.
Okay.
For what would have been the water for PSP, which became PDS, and aborted. Yeah. So, is it the abortment of all those things? It's what's coming home. And that's how come, the gas could not be brought in to help, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what happens to us? Because I'm wondering if the World Bank, I know they are sister institutions.
They provide
they provide the money.
Support, yes.
Okay, so World Bank is saying you're doing once. They have they are already saying that by the end of the year you'll be doing 104. That is debt to GDP, which was a measure that they used to usually beat their chest. Now, if you're doing 104, what does that mean, and what kind of treatment do you think we'll be getting?
No, they would help you. So they will come in and help you with the restructuring. But you have to take the lead.
So it's your plan that they'll follow?
Yeah. As I said, we were doing many of the debt restructuring before, so we tabled them, but we advanced with some of them already. We advanced with some of them by the time the program was done.
Okay.
Yeah. By the time we signed the program, I think the program was on, we knew the details and everything, but it was signed in 2015. And by 2015, we were doing ESLA towards the end of 2015. It wasn't imposed on us by the fund. But we needed to tackle after we got the badge and others, the subsidy which couldn't be VRA, we had accumulated to VRA and the rest. We had to ring fence them and do,
You brought in that whole matter of debt restructuring. You said you did one, you did it silently. There was no.
No, we're in Parliament, but it didn't. Okay, let's say it didn't threaten savings as it's being rumored now, which is a concern. But because we're talking to the banks.
Okay.
Yes, and look at the interest rate that they were charging to do the refinance and the rest.
Okay.
Now what is out there is more like, those who have the money in the bank, which is will be a repetition of what happened, when the banks collapse and the deposits remain unpaid. So you are going to top up. Remember, the concern is that you are going to top up. For some people, their money is already there, not paid.
Okay.
You're going to add to it.
So yours was, but
but I think that I don't want to add to unnecessarily, to some of the concerns.
Okay.
Eventually the policy will come up.
Okay.
And we'll know the truth.
So you're waiting to see what the plan of government is?
Obviously, because I have to be, cautious for somebody to say that I'm, maybe I have some knowledge or something I don't, so that this is going to happen. Right. So I'm also talking from what everybody is reading generally. But I'm saying these things are often done with care.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
you can go back, performing assets recovery trusts, remember? Yeah. Bank restructuring.
The government has already inaugurated a committee. People suspect it's a committee that's supposed to look at debt restructuring, because the committee's main task is to have conversations with those in the financial sector. Those are all seen as indications that this may not be the usual one that you're used to.
In any case, you consult the bank if you want to do. Consult the banks when you are doing. Because the monetary sector is very important. The financial sector is very important, and they must be efficient. So it's a normal part of the consultation. So if government is preparing for that, it's going to mean that government would have a position, in sitting with a fund for a discussion.
Is there any way you see this being?
We had a committee, for example, the VRA one, the banks and the Ministry of Finance.
You put together a committee, a joint committee.
Yeah.
But is there any way you see this being done without some pain?
Without?
A high level of pain, because already a lot of people suffered when the.
But we have done programs in the past, so you can cite Ghana. We've had programs in the past, so we don't have to go elsewhere. From Dr. Butchie through Honorable Pepra, all the way through Senior Minister Barredo. Kotose, who took over more or less in substance, to my former boss before he did a program. So when you are saying, is there any way we've had our programs. We've been counting 17?
But from all indications, except for maybe HIPIC, would we have a program?
HIPIC we benefited. Remember, much of the heavy lifting was done by the lenders and the development partners, but they insisted that part of what was being given part of the payment, so it wasn't like complete forgiveness, right? It was saying, we are forgiving, but what you should have paid to us, we want you to use it to tackle social intervention, to tackle this, and that's how come it appeared every year in the budget until 2013 when we said HIPIC was over, because no revenue flow stopped.
And I'm asking, from looking at, also if we are looking at the figures, everything looks bad. except for the fact that our commodities are still not performing badly. Crude is doing quite well.
Yeah, but remember you're importing crude.
Yes.
And we are not doing so well at the pumps because the extra components which have gone into subsidy is gone.
So everything is looking bad, downwards. Now, in this kind of circumstance, of course, the IMF arrangement that we are going to get will not be the best.
We have had countries. Remember, there are countries that, who probably are even a bit worse. I don't know. I've not looked at the figure. Lebanon, Sri Lanka, and in the past, you can point to Argentina. In Africa, you can point to Zimbabwe, which had some difficulty. And then the fragile states, which went through some of our neighboring countries, the effect of Ebola and other things. So there were countries that have gone and are going through this dip. South Sudan and all the years.
You said it's a moment for reflection. In this moment of reflection, we are considering what we've done over the years that has brought us here, as against what we have to do going forward.
And there are positives. I think we shouldn't look at the past only in terms of negatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are positives. No, every government had its positives.
Yes.
So in looking at what looking forward, it should be both, the good and the bad.
What we can learn from
and accentuate the positive. Yeah.
But do you see any positive from this government's approach to economic management?
My position on the government is well known. Not the government, economic policies in the country and the measures is well known. I've been in this studio. We've spoken, so it will take us another hour or so. because I don't want to say yes or no without justifying it. Yes.
Why you said so? Yeah. Because I've listened to you over, and you are always warning that we're coming here. How do we get out of here? Because we are looking after that.
It's only difficult, but the way we've gotten out in the past, and then maybe now we know that it's important to prepare the perfect. So maybe we can start looking at
how to prepare.
Professor Mills and Mahama, we're doing.
But it will be difficult.
Oh, sure.
Difficult. Where will the difficulties come?
Because the measures, you have to take measures. You have to cut expenditure. You have to raise revenue in a humane way. You have to do so many. We've done many of these things. I think the only thing is the feeling that leadership, doesn't tighten the belts fast enough themselves, and therefore, Yeah. So,
because a lot of people now still look at saying we are still counting plenty cars in the convoy of the president. The president is still traveling around in a manner which we thought he should cut down on. We're still not seeing, because the ministry that you used to run still has, I think, 2 deputy ministers with the Minister of State in charge of finance. At the finance, at all of that, and there are some ministries that is, for example, under former President Mahama, you had transport having railway under it. Now you have railway as a separate ministry. Sometimes when you go to the agric ministry, the number of deputy ministers will shock you. So people are expecting that
definitely
these cuts
those cuts should be across the board. That's what we've always done.
But will those cuts be enough? Because there are those who are suggesting that we may even have to look at redundancies in the public sector, public service, among other areas.
But they are occurring already. The NAPCO people were removed from public sector employment. And I don't know where the new agency has been set up in addition to NYEP. So those things are happening already. Basically, we should look to, for example, we had, we took the establishments. It's like this studio. How many people do you need sitting here? Do you need somebody else sitting there, being paid? So we took the establishment of public service and worked on attrition. And then it expands the public sector.
Okay.
But we knew there was unemployment. And all sorts of unemployment. When you talk infrastructure, you're talking employment. That's the one aspect which I wish you. We were substituting, overloading the private sector. Sorry, the public sector, the payroll in particular. With more substantive and sustainable ways of creating jobs. So can you count the number of architects, engineers, laborers, accountants, and whatever one contractor employs for one year school multiplied by 200? Port expansion, how many more people have been T3 didn't used to exist, so how many more immigration officers are there, how many more? So the same public sector, you are expanding it, but through a more, that's what it means to do it in a real, port expansion. How many more people have we? That was our model. It was completely misunderstood, and probably we didn't educate sufficiently. Sure, yes. And then we were putting a fund, I remember very well, working with Honorable Fuseni. Just as it's done in the advanced countries. There will always be snow. When the snow comes, if you have been there, they plow. And you see the big trucks which we have on our streets, they have plows at the back, they clean the streets quickly, they are paid. And they have their staff, it's seasonal, but why can't we do the same? Refilling after the rainy season. So that we keep the core of the road, and then so that the road doesn't spoil completely before we can reconstruct it.
So there are really examples to learn from, but
that was the models. We're picking from examples and duplicating them. So I'm saying that. So you can imagine all the infrastructure, cocoa roads and whatever, are my job. So if you sustain it, you are creating more jobs than putting, 10,000 people on the payroll. Unless it's justified through what I was saying. You need more customs officers at Terminal 3, right? Because they had reached their establishment. But because you have Terminal 3, the same government, is creating room for more customs officers. More. But you know how this policy was bastardized, and made, as if, yeah. And if you read our ECF, you won't see that we had agreed with IMF to do. Cuts, as was being claimed. The propaganda was so high. Right. So from terminal to ports to whatever, railways, highways will need more engineers if you sustain this. And then you create proper jobs. But nobody added this up. All that they were saying was because of nurses who were not being paid. One of the most interesting one, which we've had a tradition where when nurses are posted, teachers are posted, doctors are posted, until their paperwork came all the way, from the districts, from the towns where they went to the districts to the region, before it got to headquarters and the controller sits with Public Services Commission or Health Service or whatever. It's almost sometimes like 3 to 6 months of arrears, right? So we said, if the people have been given their appointment and they are teaching and they are there, why don't we pay them an advance of what is due to them? 3 months. So that when their paperwork is done and you owe them 6 months, you would have paid them 3 months and then you pay only 3 months.
Okay.
And this was what was politicized. That we had decided to pay only 3 months, of salaries. It was just to alleviate the difficulty. They're going to borrow and do all that. That was the initiative, a prepayment, what was due to them. But then we were working with Public Services Commission to automate the HR and link it, because the controller is not the HR manager for government. The HR manager for government is, Public Services Commission, Office of Head of Civil Service, Health Service, Education Service, Local Government Service. The HR managers for government are there. The controller is not the one who determines who should be employed, who should be promoted, who should be, trained, who should be, no. So we separated that, and we're building the electronic database for that to be linked to the payroll to make it efficient. But in the interim, we said, this thing will take time. Let's pay some advance to mitigate the hardship. And it was politicized as if it was some new policy, and we're not paying, public servants what was due to them.
Let me ask you a few questions that are coming in from two of my listeners to conclude this. Okay, so this is Evans Dako says, Honorable Seth's conversation is always insightful. Question 1, Honorable, do you foresee Ghana IMF negotiations dragging on for a year?
it doesn't have to if we work hard at it, if we are transparent, if we bring, as I said, the IMF has a lot of information. For example, one of the things they say in the Article 4 itself was that when they asked for information on energy sector debt, the reconciliation that was given went back to 2018 or I think 2019. So they would definitely want that to be updated. So the duration will depend on how fast government gives that information. Yeah. So a lot is in our court. It doesn't have to drag to a year unless they are not convinced about the information that we are. And they have said that they would want to work with Ghana to get, as quickly as possible. But we can get a program fast, and it may not be as as credible. It's such as the clarification that came to the fund on certain treatments, after we win ourselves on the IMF and went out of the last CCF. Yeah.
Then there's the other one from Albert who says, and I ask Honorable Terkper if the withdrawal of road tolls has created a gaping hole in revenue generation.
Absolutely. Yes, I've said that it would. Because globally, of course, we also need to manage, like the way we ring fence the airport tax to make it effective. There was a scheme to ring fence the road tolls. I think there were 18 pilots, which we were going to do what you call toll plaza, proper one. Those who have been to even Cote d'Ivoire, you see toll plaza. Because after all, it's a sensor. So it's on your dashboard. And overseas you have it. So for example, you can travel from Florida all the way to Massachusetts and into Canada. And you've loaded it, and it's there or on your phone, and they keep deducting electronically, and the states divide it among themselves, and then they plow it back, like they will plow back the airport tax to develop the airports. So that's what we're going to do, the toll plazas, so that you plow back the money to develop, the road, and not put it into the general fund. Yeah.
Let me conclude. This is from Eric Yao. In the UK, it says, kindly ask Honorable Terkper what I think he said he will do, but I think what
I've said a lot of what we did, and of course we're going to build on it.
But he says to correct the errors and mismanagement that has taken place in 2025 when the NDC comes into office.
We've been talking about some of those things, and yes, and we'll monitor the fund program to see whether, we'll look at it. We've been looking at that the way I've been, to see what program we are going to go into, and what, but what I can say in short answer is that the listener should remember that in our very first 2023 budget, right, we had what we wanted to do with single spine, what we wanted to do with debt, single fund, and all the way in the budgets. 2023 and 2024, 2013 and 2014. Yeah. Long before we entered the fund program.
Okay.
And it worked for us.
But there are those who suggested, in fact, you were just talking about the zero coupon bond among others, that whoever inherits this government, first year, will have to find monies that might not be available to pay off debts that will be due at that time.
So the debt restructuring we are talking about in going to a fund program, it's not just our domestic debt.
It has to tackle.
When we did 2014, and we had a program which we discussed with the World Bank and took the guarantee, we knew which ones we were going to tackle. Of course, the difference is that you may not have that time, but you have to work hard at it.
A lot of work. So it will take a lot of work first to get out of this, to get an IMF program.
We have the experience, and they are still there kicking from ERPs up. Some of our former bosses and the rest.
Well, Honorable.
So you tap their brains and tap.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining me in the studio this morning. So this morning, a lot of the conversation has focused on, were we really prepared? If we had prepared, would we have been here? Well, I do understand today is his birthday. A happy birthday to Photocopy, who is celebrating his birthday today. Happy birthday today to the young child who is doing fantastically well. But in the meantime, I want to remind you that if you want to buy land, the place to go is Hard Builders Real Estate. They have plots of land as low as 13,000 Ghana cedis, 15,000 Ghana cedis, and 20 Ghana cedis for sale to you. And they offer you a flexible payment plan. You start with a deposit of 4,000 or 5,000 and spread the balance within 6 months. Their lands are located at Chopoli, Shah Hills, Ningo Pram, Asabi, among other areas. Don't forget, with them, you can pay half the price and start off your project. That is what they are offering you. They also offer other services such as building and construction, roofing, borehole, architectural drawings, and they can install a biodigester in your home. You can locate them opposite Mandela Park, Ashaiman, or call them 059 32 44 322 or 055 53 14806. And there's one other thing I would like to recommend to you, and that is the MaxMed Prostate Care capsules. And if you're looking for a naturally formulated herbal product to boost your immune system and improve your prostate health, then you need MaxMed Prostate Care capsules. It's what you need. It's designed to improve your well-being, and it's effective for prostate support. If you have problem with urine retention, frequency of urination, and weak erection, it gives you the edge and the stronger one. Very, very important. Give them a call. Max Top Health Services 055 80 93 123 are the numbers to call. And of course, coming up is the mid-morning show, and today Ochame is off duty. Ochame has lost his mom, and the burial is this weekend. Ochame has lost his mom. The burial is this weekend. So he has duties to perform from today. Eric will take over. Eric Boatin, who is the producer of this show, one of the producers of this show, will take over. So the mid-morning show is happening. Have a lovely day.
Let's all